What's for dinner?
That is gonna be amazing. Who am I kidding? That piece of chicken was not enough. Freaking love this dish. Hey everyone, I'm Chef Z and welcome back to my channel, Chef Z Cooks. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make arroz con pollo, which is a chicken and rice dish that comes together in one pot. Now, I love making this dish because number one, it comes together in no time, and number two, it's super affordable. Did you hear that? It is super affordable. Like, I'm talking that you can feed a ton of people for less than $4 to $5 per serving. Now, I do have a recipe here on my channel where I show you how to make locrio de pollo, and in that video, I actually use boneless chicken. And in today's recipe, I'm going to be using bone-in chicken because I just find that it's super tasty and the chicken comes out super juicy. I also wanted to show you a different way that I really love bringing this dish together. Now, let's say that you want to use boneless chicken because that's just your personal preference. I will definitely walk you through all the little things that you will have to change in order to accommodate using some, like, let's say boneless chicken thighs or even some chicken breasts as well. Now, before we jump into the recipe, I do want to go over some of the ingredients that you're going to need to make this amazing dish. So the first thing you're going to need is some free-range organic chicken, bone-in, boneless if you can get it free-range. We're also going to be using some homemade sofrito, and I recently shared a video here on my channel on how I like to make my updated sofrito. We're going to be using some chicken bouillon cube. Now, I have the powdered version, but you can definitely use the cube version. We're going to be using just a tiny bit of cumin because that's all you need. We're going to be using some sazón con achiote, a little bit of olive oil, and of course, some fresh lime, porque eso no puede faltar. Now for the rice portion of this dish, we're going to be needing some long grain white rice, some tomato paste. You can use tomato sauce, but you just have to be a little careful, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later on. Some diced Cubanelle peppers, but bell peppers will also work. Some olives. Now listen, if you're one of those people who feels really strongly about olives in your rice or in food in general, just feel free to omit it. We're going to be using some fresh garlic, some onions, a little bit more chicken bouillon cube because this is rice, so it can actually take a little bit of salt, and a little bit of kosher salt just to help those onions and peppers sweat later on. We're also going to be using some black pepper and some water to help everything come together. So we're actually going to jump in and we're going to start seasoning the chicken. However, I did say that we're changing things up today a little bit, so I actually want to throw together the seasoning that we're going to use. So we're going to take our homemade sofrito, and I'm roughly using about 3 tablespoons, which equates to about, I want to say like 1/4 cup. You can honestly eyeball it, and just remember that no two sofritos are alike, so it's really going to depend on how you like to make your sofrito. We're going to be adding the chicken bouillon cube, the tiny bit of cumin, the sazón con achiote, which is going to really give this dish some beautiful color. We're now going to be adding the fresh lime. Now, if you have watched me make pernil numerous times, this should kind of feel a little bit familiar, where we are making this seasoning before we actually add it to the meat. And this is a great way just to kind of be able to taste the seasoning before you actually have it touch the raw meat, because the last thing you want to do is taste the seasoning after it's touched some raw meat, because that is a surefire way of getting sick. So now we're going to add some olive oil. And again, all of this is eyeballed. I would say this is roughly about 2 to 2.5 tablespoons of olive oil. We're gonna mix that all together. Oh, this already smells amazing. I just wanna make sure that everything is good and ready to go. Oh. This is gonna really come out amazing. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now we have the chicken, and we're just going to pour everything over the chicken, just like that. And now we just wanna mix everything, make sure it's coated in this yummy seasoning and marinade. If you're going to be using boneless chicken, use half of the amount of sopita chicken bouillon cube that I use, because one thing about boneless chicken is that you don't need to salt it as aggressively as you do with bone-in meat. Oh, it smells amazing. Now, a few things. You can let this marinate for a minimum of 20 minutes, or you can even let it marinate overnight. Honestly, this is not one of those dishes that you have to let it marinate for at least an hour. A lot of the times what I do is I have this marinating and then I go and I chop all of my fresh ingredients. And by the time I'm done, it's usually about 10 to 15 minutes later, and I can guarantee you that it's still going to come out super, super tasty. And speaking of tasty, let's head on over to the stove and put all of this together. So I've been warming this up over about medium heat. And now I'm going to add some oil. And again, I'm just eyeballing this. This is roughly about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half. Now you want to make sure that this gets really nice and hot because we're actually going to be browning the chicken. And you want that chicken to develop beautiful color because that's going to add a ton of flavor and a ton of color to our arroz con pollo. So I'm going to add the chicken. Now I'm going to take the chicken thigh and add it what would be skin side down. Now we have a ton of leftover marinade, and do not throw that out. Like, listen to me. Do not throw it out because that's going to add the majority of the flavor to arroz con pollo. Now this is going to take a couple of minutes to brown, and every so often we're gonna go in and we're going to flip it just to make sure that it's browning on all sides. And I highly recommend that you keep the lid nearby because this dish actually tends to splatter and make a huge mess. So I'm just gonna cover this, and then I'm gonna check on it in about 2 minutes to flip it over. Okay, so I'll say it's been about 2 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and now I'm going to flip over the chicken. And really what I wanna do is I actually wanna cook it about half of the way through before I go ahead and move on to the next steps of making this arroz con pollo. So as you can see, that chicken already has developed beautiful flavor. I say I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna cook it for about another 5 to 7 minutes just so that the other side can get some color. And I'm so excited for everything to really come together. Okay, so my chicken is more or less done. Not done, like don't go in and take a piece and taste it because you might get sick because it's actually not cooked all the way through. But for the purposes of this dish right here and right now, it's pretty much done. So I'm actually going to take out the chicken and then I'm going to saute all of my fresh veggies so that I can start making the rest of the arroz con pollo. Okay, so I'm now going to add the onions. I'm going to add my Cubanelle peppers. And don't worry if you see little burnt bits in your pot. Honestly, that's only going to add to flavor and color. I'm now going to add some garlic. And I'm just going to saute everything until it's well combined. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper just to help it sweat. And honestly, I'm gonna let this do its thing for about another 2 to 5 minutes because I want those onions and those peppers to really become nice and translucent. And then I'm gonna go ahead and build up even more flavor for this arroz con pollo. Okay, so now that my onions have softened, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm going to add my chicken bouillon cube. Now the reason that I don't like to add all of it when I'm seasoning the chicken is that sometimes the chicken will actually absorb all of the chicken bouillon cube and I need some of it to go into the rice. So I'm just gonna mix it all together. Seriously, you guys cannot smell this, but it smells heavenly in my kitchen right now. I'm now going to add the tomato paste. Now you can definitely add tomato sauce if you want to. However, when it comes to this dish, we want to be very mindful of how much liquid is going into it. So if you are using, let's say, some boneless chicken thighs to make this arroz con pollo, then tomato sauce will actually be really good to use because that boneless chicken won't have as much juices as the bone-in chicken, because the bone-in chicken, when we're making it, it's actually going to release even more juices, which is going to help cook the rice all the way through. So I'm just working in that tomato paste. And now what I'm doing is, not only am I building flavor, I'm also building up some color. And now for the unsung hero of this whole entire dish, we're going to be taking that leftover marinade, and I told you, do not throw it out. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's going straight into this dish. And because that has some liquid in it, that's gonna help break up some of that tomato paste as well. And again, we always want to be mindful as to how much liquid is going into this, because we don't want a soupy rice like an asopao, which, by the way, I have a couple of videos here on my channel on how you can make asopao. So if you want to check it out, I'll definitely link those below. So as you can see, that's already starting to bubble. So I'm going to take my long grain white rice, which I already pre-washed, and I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to add it. And I'm going to toast the rice ever so slightly, and this is also going to help the rice absorb some of that flavor and some of that color. And I'm just gonna work everything in together. And you're gonna see that the rice is gonna start to change color on us, but that's a really, really good thing. I am now going to add the water. Now, here's the thing. When I make my rice, I like to use a 1-to-1 ratio. So equal parts rice and equal parts water. However, you saw that there was some liquid with the sofrito marinade that I made for the chicken. Plus I know the chicken's gonna add its own liquid to it. So I'm using 2 cups of rice, and I'm actually going to be using 1.5 cups of water. Now, if you like your rice a little bit on the mushier side, feel free to use equal parts. Gonna go ahead, I'm gonna mix this all together. Beautiful. I am now going to add the olives, which I know some of you are gonna be like, no! But listen, I love olives. The more the merrier. This is already looking so, so good. And of course, this is arroz con pollo, so we're now going to add the chicken back in. So we're just gonna nestle it ever so gently. And the chicken is actually going to finish cooking in this, because remember, this thing still has to come to a boil. The water has to dry out a little bit, and then the rice is actually going to finish steam cooking. But I'll walk you through all that in just a little bit. Now, there is some liquid here. We're gonna add that as well, because that's just more flavor. So what we're gonna do next is, this is going to start to boil and to bubble, and I actually want the water to dry out as much as possible. And then once the water has dried out, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go on to the next. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Okay, so my rice is almost all the way dry through. And at this point, I like to take either a small spatula or a small spoon and just mix it as much as I can in between the chicken. I actually don't like to disturb the chicken too much. One of my favorite parts about arroz con pollo is the concon at the end, which depending on where you're from, you might have a different name for it. I know some people call it pegao, socora. Again, it has so many different names, but I'm just going in between and mixing the rice. Another tip for you guys, you can tell that the rice is ready to start steaming when you hear the little crackle pop. That's how you know you're in business, and I can actually hear it right now. So I'm going to take some fresh cilantro, which, by the way, so sorry, I realized I forgot to include this in the ingredient rundown. So we're just gonna place that right in the center. We're now going to take our lid and we're going to cover the rice, and then we're gonna put the flame down to low. You wanna put it to the lowest possible setting. And now this is going to steam for about 25 to 30 minutes, and the rice is going to come up super fluffy. So the next time I see you, we are going to be uncovering this and we're going to be digging straight into it. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. So our rice has been steaming away for about 30 minutes, and I actually wanna check on it to see if it's all the way done. And I can tell you right now that it is perfect. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take a small spatula or a small spoon, and we're just going to very gently fluff up the rice. Now you're going to notice that some of the rice that's right around the chicken might be a little bit softer than the rest of the rice, and that's totally fine. And that's because that rice got a little bit more moisture than the rest of it. Now, I want to be super careful when I'm fluffing up the rice because there is some yummy, yummy kangkong at the bottom of this, and that is gold. That has the most amount of flavor, so I don't want to disturb that yet. So everything looks pretty good. I'm going to turn off the flame, and now we're going to take this onto the island, and we're going to add the final touches, and more importantly, we're going to be getting ready to eat. So here we go. So our rice is ready. Oh yeah. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna take the cilantro that we added at the very end. We're gonna set that off to the side. And honestly, you just serve this with your favorite side dish, whether that's some tostones, some avocados, even some maduros. So there you guys have it. This is my recipe for some arroz con pollo. Like always, come back next week when I have an all-new video. If you need some inspiration on what to cook next, go ahead and click right here. Now I'm hungry. There was this little bit of chicken. I'm gonna, oh, right there, yep. Thank you guys. Mmm.